All right, time for the next ZAPCon session. I have now prepared myself for the day. Rebecca didn't wake me up super early, so I got to take a shower and stuff. Good for me. It's my distinct honor to welcome up on our next workshop here, good friend Simon Bennetts, developer turned ZAP founder after a failed pen test, distinguished engineer at StackHawk. He's going to come show us how to contribute to ZAP. I'm going to watch this one intently because this is how I do Friday live streams. So come join us at the StackHawk YouTube for Friday live streams as well, because we talk about some of this stuff at the same time. Simon, how's it going, buddy?
How are you doing?
I'm super good. How are you?
Oh, very good, thanks. And ZAPCon seems to be going great.
Everyone's having a good time. Everyone's having a good time. We're having a good time. Make sure to join us in the How to Contribute to ZAP channel in Discord for questions and answers. We're going to go through how to set up. Simon's going to go through a bunch of good stuff here. If you get lost, make sure to ask a question. We'll try to keep up, but not go so fast as we get everybody lost very quickly. A lot of the links on how to get this workshop set up are set at the top of How to Contribute to ZAP channel. I think that's about it. Simon, you ready to go?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Scott, I actually have one more thing to add.
Oh, there you go.
Is we actually have some dedicated support in Discord as well. So if as we're going through this, you run into problems or you fall behind, you can tag Casey Berg, who's already pinned in that channel under additional support. He is from the StackHawk team. He's not the creator of ZAP like Simon, but knows a bit about ZAP. So if you need a little bit one-on-one support, feel free to ping him throughout this session as well.
And we might have some of the ZAP Core team in there as well. So they said they'd try and make it too and help out.
Perfect. All right. Take it away, Simon.
Right. Thank you very much. Hope you're all doing well at home. Hope you're enjoying this session if you're watching it live, or that you enjoy the replays if you're watching it later afterwards. So what I'm going to go through today is I'm going to go through three things. One is just an overview of how you can contribute to ZAP, all the different ways, because there's lots of different ways you can contribute. But when it comes down to it, ZAP is a code project, and so coding is one of the best ways of contributing. So after covering everything, I will then focus on how to set up a ZAP development environment. And the third session, I'm actually going to make some changes to ZAP. I'm going to improve one of the release quality scan rules live on stage. Hope it all works. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm now going to share my screen. I'll just move this one over to my other monitor and hopefully share the right screen. And hopefully you can now see that. So just make sure I'm at the right place in my notes. And so this first session, what I want to do is just tell you about all the different ways you can contribute to ZAP. So why is this important to us? Well, if you go to zaproxy.org, which I've got here, and I've zoomed in a bit just so you can see things a bit better. If you click on the community section, then the very first thing is the mission statement. Mission statements can be a bit silly sometimes, but have a look at this. The very first thing, the most important thing, is to be a welcoming, community-oriented project that anyone can get involved in. That is the most important thing for us in the core team. And one of the reasons for that is when I was looking to get into security, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for a community that was welcoming and that anyone can contribute to. And that didn't exist. There wasn't a web security tool, wasn't a web security community that was like that. And so I ended up setting one up. And this is what I'm trying to achieve. And it's what the rest of the core team are trying to achieve as well. So, yeah, we're trying to make the online world a little bit safer. And we are the best open source web security tool. I think there's no doubt about that. But the most important thing is to be a welcoming, community-oriented project that anyone can get involved in. And that's one of the reasons for this workshop. So if you go back to the community page, scroll down, there is a contributing guide there. It's also the same one as linked under documentation. We've got a set of guides. We've got the Getting Started guide, desktop user guide, ZAP Developer Guide, which I'll be going through a bit later, but I'm going to start with the Contributing Guide. So this kind of tells you all the different ways you can contribute to ZAP and gives you lots of hints and helpful advice. I'm not going to just read it out, I'll just talk around it. So the first thing is liking, starring, or following ZAP. This kind of may seem, kind of minor, but these things do make a real difference. The more more stars ZAP has, or more likes and things, the more it shows that the project is appreciated, and everyone who contributes to ZAP really appreciates those kind of things. So the one thing I'm going to actually focus on now is the GitHub project, the main one. So we'll open that in a new tab and just have a look. So right now, I don't know if you can see that, 9,295. So we've got 9,295 stars right now. It would be great if we could increase that. So if you've got a GitHub account and you haven't actually starred the ZAP repo, please do. And I'll kind of revisit that at the end of the session and see if we've got any more. So obviously we've got the ZAP extensions, got Twitter accounts, Docker images and things like that, and Open Hub as well. But liking us or starring us on any of these social media things is much appreciated. Next is joining discussions. There are lots of places you can talk about ZAP and join the forums. So we've got a user group, and the user group is the best place for talking about how you use ZAP. Then we've got a developer group. So if you want to actually start contributing to ZAP, that's a great place. Got a separate group for the HUD as well, the heads-up display, because that's quite different. So we're going to talk about things there. That's great. And of course, we've got the ZAPCon Discord, where hopefully you are now, and you're asking questions and giving us feedback there. We've also got IRC. So the ZAP Core team, we kind of live on IRC, and that's how we talk, that's how we communicate. And we've got a ZA proxy channel on Libera chat. So if you want to chat to us, just join there. European office hours are kind of best, but we may be there other times. And yeah, we keep an eye on Stack Overflow as well, because some people only ever ask questions there. We always have a ZAP questionnaire that's linked to from the front of the website as well. It'd be great to get your feedback, because we are asking very specific questions. It's only one page. It'd be great if you could fill that out. And the next thing is requesting changes. So there's lots of things you can tell us about. Before you do come in and complain about things, it's best to have a look. We've got a frequent asked question, something's not working, what should I do? Which is linked from the top. And that's got a lot of kind of useful stuff, advice and guidance, like checking for updates, checking the documentation, checking the log file, and then asking us questions. But if you found something, a problem that you think is new, then you can raise an issue, got a link there. But if you found something which you think is actually a vulnerability in ZAP, something that could make people, anyone who's using ZAP, vulnerable to attacks, then please report it via our bug bounty program. So right now we actually have a $1,000 reward for remote code execution vulnerabilities in ZAP. And I think we've actually paid out 2 or 3 times for that. So we're always very keen to hear of any potential problems with ZAP in that way. And of course, you can request new features, and the more details you can give us, the better. Next up is becoming a ZAP Evangelist. So we have a pretty long list of ZAP Evangelists here, and these are people who are happy to give talks or training either in their respective locations or online. And the qualifications to get on this list are kind of just if you feel capable of doing it, if you feel like you're up to giving talks about ZAP or giving training sessions, then feel free to add yourself to this list. We've got a link to the actual file there, so you can submit a pull request if you're happy with Git, or you can actually post your details to the thread there on the ZAP developer group. And it's great to see so many people who actually want to tell people about ZAP and evangelize it and help people use it and learn more about it. Next up, contributing a success story. So on zaproxy.org, we've got this section called Success Stories, and we've got a few there, half a dozen right now. You can be sure that I'm going to be pinging pretty much all the other speakers at ZAPCon because we had some great sessions. I really want to see their stories here as well. So you'll see some of these things are quite short and sweet. There's Mozilla one, StackHawk, even shorter and sweeter. Some are a bit longer. I think Motorola. It doesn't really matter how much you want to say. It's really just a question of telling people that you use ZAP and how it's helped you. So if your company has actually benefited from ZAP, we would love to hear from you, and we would love to feature your story here. And you can just get in touch with us or submit a PR via the link on that page. Then next up is improving the ZAP documentation. Now, a few years ago, the ZAP documentation was pretty poor. It's come on leaps and bounds. For a start, we've got this new website, which you're looking at now, and the source code is available. We've got a link there. Actually, if you go down to the bottom of most pages, you'll see this kind of edit on GitHub link, so actually take you straight there to the relevant page. We do have quite a bit of automatically generated content, so not all pages will have that, but please get in touch if you spot anything that's wrong or if you'd like to contribute anything new to the website. We also have the ZAP Desktop User Guide, and that is available online via this website, of course, and it's available in ZAP as well, so it's part of the Java help, and we use the same source code for that as we do for the website. And so all of the Desktop User Guide side, all of that is actually generated. So hopefully if you go there, there isn't an edit on GitHub button, but you can edit on GitHub. It's just a little bit more complicated. But if you spot anything that's going wrong, which could be improved in the Desktop User Guide, or if you add new features, which I'll cover later, then it really would be great to get more content there. And for add-ons actually have their own section. So every add-on has its own help, and that's something I'll show you later on when I'm hacking around with ZAP. And we have some API pages as well. Right now they're kind of generated, and we need to update information on how to actually contribute those. So I'll leave that for the moment. So after the docs, it's translation. And this is something which is a little bit unusual for security tools. There are very few security tools that are either internationalized or even translated into other languages. And that's true of commercial security tools as well as open source ones, which I think is very sad. And I think the rest of the core team as well think it's very important that tools are available in the native languages of the people using them. So the fact that ZAP is being translated to so many languages, I think is great, and we'd really love to have some help with this. So to help translate the ZAP desktop, we have a project on Crowdin. And if you click on there, then you actually see all the different languages we've got set up and the percentages of how far the translations have gone. And you can sign up to Crowdin for free and then just start translating. And what we have is we have an automatic process. So we have a set of GitHub actions which automatically push any changes to the ZAP desktop and the add-ons, any UI changes, all the labels and the help and things, they get pushed across to Crowdin. And whenever anyone makes any translations in Crowdin, we've got jobs that pull those back and automatically raise PRs. So this process is all not completely automated. We have to approve them, but it's very smooth, and all you have to do is translate things on Crowdin. You can also translate the desktop user guide. That is quite a lot more work. There's a lot of text in there, and actually that label's wrong. That should say was ZAP help rather than ZA proxy. But you'll see we've got fewer languages there. We tend to only add languages to the ZAP help when there's a reasonable amount of translation in the desktop. So once you've translated the desktop to a new language and got us to a certain level, then we'll be happy to add the help translation for the help to that language as well, if you really fancy doing that, which would be great. And one thing is for the ZAP desktop, If the language you'd like to translate ZAP into isn't there, then just ping us either on Crowdin or via the user group, developer group, or an email or whatever, and we'll add that language in for you. So that was all of the stuff up to coding. So obviously coding is a fairly significant section, and that's what I'll be covering next. And I'll go into the scan rules as well. We do have a little section there about the core team. So if you want to know what it means to be in the core team and what we expect from the core team and how to actually join it, then please read that and get in touch and start contributing more. Right, so Scott or Rebecca, how's everyone doing on Discord? Any questions that you think I could answer now?
Nobody has any questions yet. I don't think we lost anybody just quite yet, Simon.
Okay, that's good. Right, so the next part, this is where I might start losing people, because this is setting up a ZAP development environment. And surprisingly enough, we do have documentation for this as well. So this is in the ZAP developer guide. And we've got quick start guide for building ZAP, then building ZAP with Eclipse, IntelliJ, and talking about verifying your changes, creating new add-ons, and some rules and guidance. So I'm going to kind of run off this, but I'm going to be following it myself. So I'm going to be actually setting this up, and hopefully you can follow along. So I have actually done a session, a deep dive on this, but I thought it'd be good to go over this again. Now, what you'll need is Git and JDK 8 or 11. Now, what I have here, I've got my terminal set up, and that's where I am. So I'm using Java Open JDK 11 and Git 2.3.2. Any modern version, any recent version of Git should be fine. So, and in this directory, I have absolutely nothing at all. So I'm starting from scratch. So the first thing to do is to clone the two main repositories. So the first one is ZA Proxy, and this is the ZAP Core. So you can't do anything without this, really. This is what you absolutely need. And the next one to do will be ZAP Extensions. See, it didn't take too long. And you're actually going to need this as well. Originally, you could actually, a while ago, you could run the core on its own without any of the add-ons. It wasn't as useful, but now we've actually got some key components in ZAP Extensions. They're kind of called mandatory add-ons now, one of which is networking. What we're trying to do is move more stuff into ZAP Extensions because that's where the add-ons live, and we can update the add-ons at any time. And that means if we want to push out any enhancements or bug fixes, we don't have to do a new full ZAP release. Whereas anything in ZA Proxy, if we change that, we've got to push out a full ZAP release before anyone can use it as part of the stable release. So that's why we're moving more stuff to ZAP Extensions, including things like the networking. So you're really going to need that. Let's see, it didn't take too long. And what we now want to do is, what I'll do is just double check my notes. So we actually have, there are mandatory add-ons, and I am going to show you that. So here we go. This is the command for installing the mandatory add-ons, and that is actually in ZAP Extensions. So I will cd ZAP Extensions, and then I'll paste this command in. So as you'll see, we're using Gradle for all of our build, and the first time you run Gradle, it'll actually take a while to pull down a load of stuff. So some of you might be catching up now. But that is, I've copied the mandatory add-ons, and that means we've got a fighting chance of getting ZAP to run. So we should somewhere down here. I will copy the weekly add-ons in a bit, but we'll see there, this is how you actually run ZAP from the source. So I do need to change to ZA Proxy, and I'm actually not going to run the command there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you Gradle, and if you put tasks in, then it'll actually give you a lot of info. It'll tell you all the tasks that are available. And of course, it's scrolled off the screen, but you'll see you've got a significant number of tasks here. You don't need to use them all. I don't use them, very many of them at all. There's just a small number that I use a lot of the time. I don't actually use the run one very much. I'm going to use it now, but I don't actually want to run the run one on its own, because if you have a look, it says run ZAP from the source using default dev home. So when you run ZAP, ZAP has a default home directory, and if you run the ZAP the release version, then it has a different directory from when you're running the dev version. That's so that if there are changes in dev that aren't applicable to the release version, they don't pollute. But I've already got my dev environment set up, and I didn't want to show you kind of pollute that with this one. So if we have a look here, you can type Gradle w help -- task. So I'm going to do help, and I want to know a bit more about this run command. And it tells you run ZAP from source, but we've got this --args option. So that's what I'm going to use. Now you don't have to do this unless you have another ZAP installation. But what I'm going to do is --args and equals --star test. So what I'm doing here is this is telling ZAP that I'm passing the dir parameter to ZAP, and I'm saying use a different directory to the home one. So that means I should be getting a clean version of ZAP rather than one polluted with all of my development changes. So as I said, you don't have to do this. You can do, it won't cause any problems, but as I said, you don't need to. So ZAP is starting for the very first time here, and you'll see it's a little bit, the text still a bit small. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change that. Again, you don't have to do this, but it just makes make the demo a bit easier. And what we need to do is have a look at display, and I'm going to change the font size, and hopefully 18 should be okay. And what I'll need to do now is shut down before that's applied, but I will just show you we have very few add-ons here. So we've got the sites tree there, nothing to the right. We've got request and response, got break as well, a few tabs there, not very many. And actually for this time, that's all right. It doesn't matter, but it would be useful to have more. So go back. There is a task for copying the weekly add-ons, and that is in ZA proxy. So I will run that. Now this may, again, this may be a bit quicker for me. Gradle does cache a load of things. So I mean, it'll take a little while, but you may find it actually takes a bit longer for you. That's not surprising, unless you've got a faster machine than me, in which case it might be quicker.
All right, so we haven't gotten any questions in the Discord yet, Simon, but I did just want to give folks a chance to catch up. If you weren't able to catch everything Simon just did, please drop a question in the Discord chat and we can kind of walk through it once more. Want to make sure everybody's able to get ZAP stood up on their own and effectively so they can follow the rest of the workshop. Of course, got to get this stuff right. So if you're running into anything, please drop us a line in the Discord and we'd be happy to help you.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. One thing, no warnings came up at all, and that's because Gradle was caching things. You will probably see a whole load of warnings come up when the weekly add-ons are compiled for the first time. Those are just warnings. We do actually want to get rid of those warnings, so if you fancy getting stuck into ZAP development, fixing some of those warnings would actually be a really great place to start. But what I will do now is, so you don't have to install the weekly add-ons. You can just go with the default set, or you could add individual add-ons as you want. You can also pull them down from the ZAP Marketplace. What I will do, I'll just run ZAP again. I'm going to use the same directory argument as well. And hopefully this time ZAP will come up and it'll be a bit more readable for you. And don't want to persist it. So this dialog, we're talking about persisting the ZAP session. ZAP uses a database to store all of the information. If you don't persist it, then that database will just get shut down and lost when you close ZAP. For me, right now, that's not a problem. I don't want to keep this stuff. But if you actually want to keep the session and come back to it, it's actually much better to persist it at the start, because we actually copy the whole database. If you persist it halfway through or towards the end of your session, it will take much longer. So persisting the session now is really quick. Persisting it later on will take much longer and gives you no benefit, really. So if you know you want to keep this ZAP session so you can come back to it and reopen it and look at it again, then persist it at the start. But I'm just kind of doing a training thing, so I don't want to do that. And what we'll see here now is that we actually have scripts tab, and we have script console, and we have a whole load of other ZAP add-ons here. So these are all the add-ons that are included in the weekly release. These are kind of the ones that we expect will be most useful for most people. You can, of course, download add-ons from the ZAP Marketplace. So you've got loads of add-ons here. But if you do that, then you won't actually be able to change them. And in development environment, you're probably looking at actually changing things. So that's why I copied them across from the ZAP Extensions directory. So hopefully everyone is okay with that.
Hey, Simon, real quick.
Yeah.
When you did copy weekly add-ons, you were doing that from ZA proxy extensions, right? Or ZAP extensions?
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. So ZA proxy folder, copy weekly add-ons. I suppose we could actually put CD, ZA proxy and CD, the relevant, because it is a little bit confusing here. So we got a lot of information here, but maybe we'll add the CD to the right direction, the right directory, just to help.
So copy weekly add-ons is a task you run from ZA proxy.
That is correct.
Cool.
Great. So talk about running ZAP from the source, and we scroll down. One thing, you may get something about not being able to use port 8080, which is the default port. I actually had a fun thing when I was doing the preparation for this. I started getting some really weird, it kept on coming up with the Tomcat welcome page, and I thought something was seriously broken. It turns out on the Mac will actually allow more than one process to listen on the same port. And I already had Tomcat on 8080, and I forgot that ZAP starts by default on 8080. So it was getting very confused. So do make sure that ZAP is listening on a different port. On other platforms, it will warn you. On Mac, apparently it doesn't, which, that fooled me. But one thing I want to show you now is thinking about if you want to contribute to ZAP, because this is an important thing. So you will need a GitHub account. And what you need to do is fork the ZAP repos on GitHub. And once you've done that, you don't have to fork all of them. We have a lot of repos. I'll show you. We go to ZA proxy. We actually have 37 repos. You don't need to do. I don't have most of those forked, I must admit, or not on my usual workspace anyway. So, but one thing you will need to do is update your remotes. This is so you can actually push things back. So I will do that now. I'm in ZA proxy, and you'll see you need to replace username. So I will. So I've already, not surprisingly, forked these on GitHub. So, but you can just kind of copy and paste these commands apart from the username bit. And they don't appear to do anything, but they are important. Right, so that is basically, we've now got ZAP running from the command line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add ZAP to Eclipse. And you don't have to use Eclipse. You don't have to use an IDE. You will find it easier with an IDE. You can use whatever IDE you like, but the kind of ones we're most familiar with are Eclipse and IntelliJ. So we've got detailed instructions here. But I said, so if you use another IDE and you get ZAP working in, then please send us a pull request. We'd love to extend this with other IDEs. Now, we kind of recommend the Eclipse IDE for Java developers. I use Eclipse because it's what I've used for years. I'm not saying it's better than any others. You know, choose whichever IDE you find best, and particularly best for Java development. And I have, so I've kind of hacked this around to hopefully improve the size of the fonts, although not the ones in the left-hand side. And what you'll see is you need to go to File, Import, and Gradle existing Gradle project. So, I don't know if you can see this, but you go File, Import, and then existing Gradle project. And we need the directory, and as you can see, I've already got them set up here because I did try this out before. I will put in ZAP proxy first. Up to you whether you set up any working sets or anything like that, but you don't have to. And we have ZAP proxy. So next I will import, go to File, Import, existing Gradle project, and we'll do ZAP Extensions. Now, when I tried this before, I did have some strange Gradle issues, but hopefully those will be okay this time. We shall see. Eclipse can be interesting to work with. Right, so there we are. We have imported both ZAP and ZAP extensions. Now, the one thing you will see is if you kind of go in here, I really don't like the way, actually, so I haven't changed this back, but the default project presentation is flat. I really don't like that, so I always change it to hierarchical. So up to you, try it out, but that is my recommendation. And I'll just check. Okay, so I've got a load of run configurations probably from the last time when I did any of this stuff. So I actually want to delete that. So I've got the same experience as you will, hopefully. So in order to run ZAP from Eclipse or from any other IDE, we do have description down here. You basically have to find the ZAP.java class. So that is under ZAP proxy, then ZAP, source main Java, org, zaproxy.zap, and zap.java. So this is the main entry point. So if you go down to the end, there should be a main class somewhere. I think, oh no, it's halfway up. So this is where we come in to ZAP. And what you can do is you can right click and then run as Java application. And you'll see it's failed to start, mandatory add-on not found. This is expected, and that's why I deleted my profile thing. So because, and this is completely expected, but the fact we've actually run it makes things easier because we have to change the workspace. So if we now go to run configurations, it should have created this ZAP configuration. And in the arguments, you'll see we've got a default working directory, which is not what we want. We want that one there. And I will change that to there. And then I will run ZAP. Oh, and interesting. That's because I copied too much. Guaranteed.
Hey, Simon.
Yeah.
Warning for everybody following along. What Simon just did there is really, really important because of how add-ons are working in ZAP now. So if you don't do that, you're never going to get ZAP to start in your development environment. So if anyone's stuck or didn't see it or whatever, hit us up in the Discord and go walk through that again. And we'll go through it again because it's super, super important.
So that is all covered in the guides, but it's, there's a lot of information here. So, and there's loads more stuff about debugging and things, but I'm actually going to mostly I'm probably going to run ZAP from the command line because I've already set it up so that it comes up with the right, in the right directory and has the right font size and things, but it doesn't actually matter. You can either run ZAP from the command line, from your IDE, we can mix and match. So it's entirely up to you. So how's everyone doing now?
No questions yet. Rebecca's doing a good job of translating working commands into Discord. So we're kind of following along.
Excellent.
No one has said that they're stuck. So I think we're okay so far.
Great. Okay. So now we're going to get serious. We are actually going to change some code and test it out. So what I'm going to do, I already mentioned that we have in the documentation contributing guide, we've got a whole load of stuff on coding. So that links to the developer guide. Then it talks about what to work on. And we've got good first issues. These are things that we think are pretty small, they're well defined, they're a good place to start. And we actually think it's, if you haven't contributed to ZAP before, it's a great place to start, but so you get used to our processes and what you need to do. Once you've done one of those, we now have good second issues. But after that, you can work on anything really, but I think the scan rules are really good place to start because and they have their own section. And one of the reasons they're a great place to start is you don't have to understand the rest of ZAP. ZAP is a big, complex project. The scan rules relatively self-contained, and they're a great way of learning about security. It's actually where I started with ZAP. It was kind of a few UI changes, and then it was like, well, how does ZAP find things? How does it report things? Why isn't it finding certain vulnerabilities? So it's a great place to start. And we have a whole lot of issues. We have some tagged with false negative and false positive. So false negative is where ZAP is failing to find something it should. And false positive is where it's finding something and it's not really an issue. And if you saw ZAPCon yesterday, you'll know that there is now a StackHawk ZAP fund. And we have a load of the issues which were actually part of that fund. And I'm hoping we'll be able to set bounties on a load more of the scan rule issues. So keep checking back on that. I think this is a great place for people to contribute to. So the next question is, which scan rule to work on and how to improve it. So if you've got your own application and ZAP has failed to find something or has got a false positive, great, have a look at that. We've got the issues labeled false negatives and false positives. But if none of those appeal, then there are loads of deliberately vulnerable applications. Now, these are actually a bit of a double-edged sword. So this is the OWASP project. make it a little bit bigger for you, Vulnerable Web Applications Directory. And two of the leaders, myself and Rick, are actually ZAP leaders as well. And this has a load of, so you've got a load of mobile apps, and we've got offline apps, and we've got online apps. So these are all the deliberately vulnerable applications we're aware of. If you know of any that aren't on here, then let us know or send us a pull request. Now, the one thing we should stress is that ZAP is designed, what we really want ZAP to do is find vulnerabilities in real-world applications. The deliberately vulnerable applications can be a good source of those, but sometimes they are kind of really obscure or they're kind of fake vulnerabilities. So the important thing is, if you're looking at potential vulnerability, you've got to think, is this something that can happen in the real world? And we don't want to target specific applications. We're not looking for CVEs. We're not looking for, oh, we know it's this type of application, it's this version, therefore it's going to be vulnerable. We're looking for custom vulnerabilities, really, vulnerabilities in custom applications. And if you start looking at vulnerabilities, particularly an application like OWASP Dupe Shop. OWASP Dupe Shop is a great application for teaching about web security. However, if you run ZAP against it, ZAP actually finds very few vulnerabilities. And I've gone and looked into them, and in most cases, it's pretty reasonable. Most of the vulnerabilities that ZAP doesn't find, you have to have that extra knowledge. You have to have a person behind it thinking about how to exploit the application. So there are certain types of vulnerabilities that automated scanners like ZAP are very good at finding, and quite a lot of vulnerabilities that you need somebody to kind of make logical assumptions and deductions. So it's kind of key to, it's very important to think about an application, try a vulnerability, and think about whether it should be possible for an automated tool to find it. And if you're not sure, get in touch with us. We're always happy to talk about these things. So actually, I will mention now, we do have, if you go to documentation, I think it is, we have some test scans. So we are running, the moment we're running ZAP against Google firing range. We're also running against WAVSEP. We haven't got those results here. And WebSec Labs is coming. This is fairly new. We've got this on here. And we can actually show you the results. So you can see that something like mixed content, we are doing very well. And reflected cross-site scripting, we're doing pretty well. And for things like escaped XSS, not so well. So these are definite ones where you could actually help us with. But I would mention that some of them, things like the DOM XSS ones, we know that quite a few of the ones in firing range are no longer real vulnerabilities because browsers have actually fixed those vulnerabilities in the browser, so they're not exploitable. That's one of the reasons we haven't been able to go through all the DOM XSS ones and work out which ones are real ZAP should find or not. So be aware. I mean, quite a few of these vulnerable applications aren't very well maintained. It takes a lot of effort to maintain vulnerable web applications, and people do other things, and therefore not all of them are kept up to date. So I didn't want to look at firing range one. I wanted to look at something a bit different, and luckily I got a call from Glenn from the Secure Knowledge Framework, which is an OWASP project. So, and that is actually, for some strange reason, it is find it. Are we under SKF Labs? And it's under offline for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. And when you open it, you'll find out that the certificate actually expired. I think it was yesterday. I've pinged Glenn about this, but it doesn't really matter. We can just ignore that and accept the risk. So Glenn from Secure Knowledge Framework pinged me to say, Simon, we are now using ZAP to test the Secure Knowledge Framework labs, and ZAP is finding a load of vulnerabilities, but there's also some vulnerabilities it's not finding. He just wanted to know why. So I said, well, so I explained about, certain types of vulnerabilities are difficult for automated tools to find. And these things, it takes a while to look into. So I said, do you have anything online I can play with? He said, oh yeah, we've got an online service you can play with. Do you have the results? Do you have the answers? He went, oh yeah, we've got those. Great. That makes my job so much easier. So this is their site. Hopefully you've got a link to it. I said it's off the vulnerable web applications. Hopefully you've got a link to it in Discord now. You don't have to log in. You can skip login. It means you don't actually save stuff. But in this case, we don't have to. And it's the SKF labs we want. And in this particular case, so I had a look at a load of these things, and some of them ZAP was finding. Some of them there was no way an automated tool could find. And in at least one case, the vulnerability was in a header, which by default ZAP doesn't scan. So you just have to change the input vectors, and then ZAP found it. But the one that interested me was an open redirect vulnerability. And it wasn't the standard open redirect, it was the harder open redirect vulnerability. But ZAP's usually quite good at finding these, so that surprised me. So what you do is you click on Start, and what that will do is that's kicking off Kubernetes, apparently. So I'm going to have a new app just for me. And while I do that, while that's ticking away, I am going to start ZAP again. And I will do it from the command line, so I know I've got the font set up, everything. So there is my URL. If you do this, you should get a different one. If you rip this one off, it shouldn't really matter. So we have that URL, and what I want to do is manually explore. But we can just click on the Firefox button here, and I can paste that in. So this is the live demonstration and unvalidated URL redirections. And you'll see, sorry, this is the old website. So we go to the new website, and you get welcome to the new website. That's it. That is a demo. And that is great because it's just really small, short and sweet, and just really shows this vulnerability. Now, ZAP has already found a load of alerts, but these are passive alerts. So it's just looking and not touching. It is not doing any attacking at this stage. And these aren't particularly interesting ones. These aren't the ones we're concerned about. So if we have a look at this site, we'll see this is the post. So here's the request, and here is the response. So, and you'll see we've got the, so it's a 302 and the location there. So this is what I want to see whether ZAP will find a vulnerability in it. So I'm just going to right click, attack, and active scan. Now, so I'm just attacking this one URL, but even so, I'm not going to use the default policy. I just want to speed things up. I just want to check for external redirects. So in this case, I can show advanced options and make this tab a bit bigger. And we have a look at the policy. So we can actually set this here and now. And because we're actually on the latest version of ZAP from GitHub, we actually have an option to turn the default strength off. If you're running ZAP, the version of ZAP, which is the stable release, you won't have that option. But that doesn't matter if you still have that, because what we can do is we can basically turn everything off from this set of controls. So all of the different rules should now be off. But we want to turn the redirect rule back on. So red in, and spell red in there. And you might not be able to see this, but that miscellaneous has been highlighted, and there is external redirect. So we now want to change that to medium. And I'm going to start my scan. And as you see, it happened very quickly. And if you're actually trying to check to see whether ZAP finds specific vulnerabilities it's so much quicker to just use the rule that you want to test and just test the actual URL you're interested in. And if we have a look at the alerts, we will see there is no external redirect vulnerability. So ZAP is not finding it. So why is ZAP not finding it? Well, what we can do is we can actually, as I said, Secure Knowledge Framework actually does have all the solutions, which is just so good of it. So I will put this URL in. And if you haven't got that, hopefully Rebecca's got it, but if not, we'll put it in later. And these are, so this is the SKF Labs. And what I want to do is find, it's not hard, it's harder too. And we can actually find out, obviously, if you really want to improve your security knowledge, you can just try hacking it manually and seeing if you can actually find the vulnerability yourself. But if you're just improving the rules, then cheat. Yeah, why not? And what we'll see if we scroll down is that they've got a blacklist, or a deny list, as we like to call now, definition, and that is the URL must not contain a dot and /. So that is why, but that is what this test is actually checking for. So let's go back to ZAP and let's have a look at the rules. So if we go to documentation and then scroll down, we've got alert details. Here we have all of the alerts that ZAP can raise. Well, it can raise more via scripts. We haven't got all those in yet. If I type in red, we'll see got open redirect, but that's a passive scan rule. So what we really want is this external redirect alert or rule. So this will tell you all about the rule. But the key thing is, if you scroll to the bottom, it actually links to the source code to make it easier, even easier for you. So if we have a look at the source code, we'll scroll down a bit. We've got the standard header. And we've got the maps. So hopefully you saw it was A3 injection at 21, 2017, 01 injection, and open redirect in Web Security Testing Guide. And we will see that we're using a random host to prevent false positives, and it looks something like that. So randomnumber.owas.org, and it's got dots in. And if we have a look at the targets here, we will see we're always using this redirect site, and we're not actually manipulating it in any way. So all of the attacks from this rule will include a dot. Now, this is one where we've got to think, is this kind of a reasonable thing to test, something which doesn't have a dot in? And I think it is, because if we have a look at the labs, we'll actually find that there are options for double encoding or UTF encoding, which means this page is actually vulnerable. So let's see if we can actually improve this rule. So for that, I'm going to close down ZAP for a start, because I'm going to put the rule back in. And then we'll go to Eclipse. And in this case, it's not ZAP, it's ZA Proxy. So all of the add-ons will be in here, and all the scan rules will be. Now, I mean, we actually did have the go here. That one, we will see it is actually in ZAP Extensions, Addons, scan rules, and then we dive into the source. So we can go into Addons, scan rules, source main Java, and here we go. And what it is was the external redirect scan rule, which is here, and that should look exactly like the one I just showed you. So this is where we have the targets, and what we want to do is we want a new target. So I'm going to copy that one. But we actually want to change the redirect site. So we want to replace, and we want to place the dot with the double coded, so that is sent to E. That's only single coded encoded, but when ZAP actually applies it, we double encoded. And that is double encode the dots. So that is hopefully all we need to do to detect this vulnerability. For some rules, you will need to change the logic. And in that case, look down here and you'll see there's quite a lot going on. But in this case, what I'm hoping for is that just adding that new payload will do the trick. So I have saved that. Now, what I'm going to do is hopefully I will be able to, I'm actually going to install this add-on from the Gradle tasks here. You can do it from here or from command line. It doesn't matter. Again, we'll go to add-ons and then active scan rules. And under ZAP add-on MISC, we've got copy ZAP add-on. And that all happened. So what I will now do is I will restart ZAP. And we need to go through the whole thing again. So we've still got that. So again, I will kick Firefox off from that button. If you actually change the browser to Chrome when you launch ZAP from the manual, if you go to the manual Explorer, you can change your browser, and then ZAP will use whichever one you've used last. But that is the. Let's see if I can get the right URL in. As you can see, old website. Go to the new website. That should be enough for us. So we now go to the post, and now if I'd actually saved my policy, or was it actually going to be set up? So no, I could have saved this as a policy, but I didn't. And what we should have is we now have an external redirect vulnerability. So that was it. That was, as you see, quite an easy fix. Obviously, some of these things will be more complicated, but that one was quite nice and straightforward. So is that it? Unfortunately not. So what we really like to see is we really like to see unit tests. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a unit test as well. So what I'll do is in Eclipse or your IDE, instead of source main Java, we have source test Java. It has the same kind of structure, and there should be an external redirect scan rule unit test. And when I opened this, I was not a happy bunny. If we have a look, we only have 2 tests, and one of them should return expected mappings, and one should have high level. So this unit test is not a very good one. It's not actually testing the rule. Most of the unit tests do test the rule. This one doesn't. That's a shame. That makes it a bit harder for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a test for the standard case. And what I always do in this case is look for something I can copy. So if we have a look at the first, that's not a full class, but we have a look at the buffer over scan rule unit test. Then we've got the mappings one, and then should create alert. This looks better. So what this test does is it actually starts its own server. We've got nano server, and we start it, and then we actually handle the request. And we actually start off by creating an example message. Then we pass that to the rule. Then we scan. Then we check to make sure that we've raised the expected alert. So that looks like something which is good to rip off. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it in here. Now, obviously this isn't quite how we want it. So the name for a start, should create alert, not ideal. So I'm going to call it should report simple redirect. And we actually have this URL as well, a unique one. So I think it potentially could cause problems with different handlers on the same test. Anyway, I'll just paste that in there. And then what this one does, it's actually checking a name. So we don't want to do that because really with redirects, it's going to be redirecting to a site. So change that to site, which will break things. There's a global replace here, but site in there as well. And then, so we're checking in this for the buffer overflow, it's checking that it's more than 1,000. We don't want that. We actually just want to know the size is greater than 0. That's good. But instead of returning an internal error, we don't want to do that. We want to return a redirect. I do love source code completion. Then I'll change this as well, just so it's a bit clearer. And we also need to add a header because we need the location header and we need site. Oh, actually, it's the site, not the text string site. So what this will do is if there is a parameter called site, then we will put that in a redirect. That's pretty vulnerable. So hopefully, if I delete things and save that rule, I should be able to run it and right-click Run as JUnit test. We'll see it fails, but if we have a look, okay, parameter equals name, that should be site. And run it again. And so the evidence, expected connection closed. In fact, we've got this horrible .owas.org URL. So is get evidence. So what we actually want to do is we want to see if this ends with. We don't know what random number is going to be put in, but .owasp.org and is equal to true. Save that and put an extra bracket in there and we'll run that. And that works. Great. So we now have the basic test for the rule. That's good. But what I'm going to do now is I want to make sure that I'm testing the new code, not the old code. So I'm going to create a test, but I'm going to comment out my change. So, and then I'm going to copy this test to make sure it fails without that changing. Copy the whole method. Obviously, it's got the same name, which isn't good. So report in. It should report double encoded redirect. Copy that and put it in that URL. And then what we want to do is we want to change this to say, so we'll only do a redirect if the site's not null, the site's length is greater than 0, and not site dot contains. So that is the changes I need to make. and I have commented out my new change, and I will run this. And it fails. And what it fails on is number of alerts raised. So we're expecting one alert and there weren't any. So this is as it was, as expected. So I'm now going to go in here.
Hey, Simon.
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious if you're cheating on your test-driven development here, or if you are actually doing test-driven development.
I'm not going to be claiming to do test-driven development,
Okay.
but it's, I wanted to check that I was actually testing the new code. So that's why I've done it this way.
So you added a test that didn't exist that was just checking probably the old versions of the test, right?
Exactly.
Should report on external redirect or whatever the first
Yep.
one was, or should report simple redirect.
Yeah.
It's a test that was testing the old code,
Yep.
basically. It's testing all of the code, but the old code to make sure that alerts.
Yeah.
And you just added a new test to make sure that the double encode variation fires, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one.
Test supported development, King Thorne said.
Exactly. And ideally, would like pretty much all the code tested. It takes time. I'm not going to do that now. But I thought it was, I wanted to actually add one test for the existing thing and then on to the new one. So
I do have another question about the lab.
Sure.
If you pull up the lab one more time, or the answer key.
The answer key, this one here.
There is a thing in here that says the dot blacklist bypass and then also the / bypass.
Yeah.
Is the / bypass not in the schema?
So we are testing / as well.
Oh, okay. So we're testing for the / escape already.
Yes.
What was missing there was the double encoded dots.
Exactly.
And then last question. Is there a function in ZAP to automatically double encode or safe encode or any of that stuff? Or do you always have to do that replace to make sure you're getting the value you want?
There are a lot of encoders in ZAP. I had a quick look and I couldn't find one that did what I wanted, which is why I've kind of gone for this simple option. But yeah, there are encoders in ZAP and Java in general.
Okay, cool.
Right, so I have uncommented my change and I'm going to run the test again. And we'll see that fails, but it fails on the evidence. And that is because what we really need to check for, the dots obviously aren't there. So it's sent to E and to E. Save that. Try that again. And that passes. So what I've done is I have changed the rule and I've added a test which should have been there in the first place and added a new test for my change. So is that it? Not quite. What we need to do is there are a few extra things. One is add something to the changelog.
Ooh. Before you do that.
Yeah.
Can you do the UTF encoded one? Just to kind of walk through it again?
That one.
Yeah.
You want me to, I mean, that's just another solution to the same one. So we could replace it, but that's just a different payload. And what what we have is, there's always a balance as to how many payloads we have, because this comes down to how many attacks scan rules make. So in theory, you'd have thought the best thing is to have as many payloads as possible. We don't encourage that because we have these kind of strengths for active scan rules, and at a low strength we recommend something like 6 attacks per parameter. For the medium strength, around 12, and then for height, about 20 odd. I've got an insane level as well. But the more attacks you make, the longer things take. So we don't want to just throw as many payloads in as possible. We want to be careful and have the minimum set of payloads that actually have the maximum effect. It's a balance.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So if someone was to make a change, something similar to what you're suggesting here, and potentially add too many things, they're going to get feedback from the core development team that says, there's maybe a little too many tests.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, we have some of the unit tests actually check how many requests are made at the different levels. So they might even fail the unit tests.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon.
No problem. So changelog, is this a change or a fix? Well, it's kind of I think it's a fix, really. This is in the unreleased section. Every so often I put it in the wrong one and get told off. So we want something like, put a my to start with, and then sections. So say the external redirect scan rule, so people know what we're talking about, to detect deny mistakes, but hey, right. So that's not all, because we also want to check the help. Now, a quick way of doing that is actually going back to ZAP, and in this case, we need to go to the marketplace. I'll show you the help in Eclipse as well, but as you see, it's not so easy to read. So active scan rules, and we go down. External redirects, and actually there's not much. That's fairly generic. In this case, I don't think we need to change the help, but in some cases you might want to. And in some cases, if you actually change the thresholds, or then that might be a case where if you're targeting particular technologies or anything like that, if you're changing what it's detecting at different thresholds, that's when we might want to update the help, or if it changes in a different way. So what I'll do is just show you. I think it's under source main resource. Oh no, that's the properties. So actually you've got to go to source main Java help org, work our way down, and now we have the help for the different languages. You don't have to worry about that because Crowdin and our jobs will handle it. But this is the HTML. That's the same HTML you saw before. As you can see, it's a bit easier to read on the website, which is why I usually go there. But you can actually check everything. You can, if you need to change it, that's where you change it. So is that it? Possibly not. So what we need to do is we actually need to check that the code is in the right format. And for that, we go to the verification section, and we've got this spotless check. Now, I very rarely run this because it's probably going to fail. And the reason I don't run it often is because the easiest option is just a spotless apply. So as just a matter of course, I will do a spotless apply. Of course, unless I forget, in which case it'll then fail the build when it gets to when you submit a pull request. But that then worked, and hopefully now when we do spotless check, that should all work. And yeah, there we go, that passed. So what we now can do is we can now submit a pull request. So, well, first of all, I'm going to change to a new branch team, which is always advisable. Switch to new branch on 2022. Probably should have done that before I made any changes, but hey, at least I've done it before doing commit. And team commit This is one thing I don't like. I can't get the hang of this dialogue down here. It's kind of weird. So I always go to Eclipse Preferences and turn off the Use Staging View to Commit instead of using Commit Dialog. Up to you whether you do that, but that's what I always do. And right-click Team Commit. And that makes much more sense to me. So we can see the files we've changed, and if you want, you can double click on them and you can see what the changes are. So you can see we've done that. And they all look kind of sensible. And so we can put a suitable message in. In this case, I'll put scan rules because this is a ZAP extension, so we don't know which. Otherwise, people don't know which add-on it applies to. That's added, right? And one more thing is there is an option here to add signed off by key. Signed off by Simon. It's a new line in there. So you can turn this on in Eclipse by default. If you don't put something like that in, then it will fail when it gets to GitHub and our test run. So we do require that. And hopefully I will be able to commit that. Now, I'm not going to push it from here. I'm going to do that from the command line. So never remember this format. We just type git push and it'll tell you what it is. So I have set up authentication from the command line for my Git. If you haven't done that, you will need to. And please look at online documentation to help you do that. So I'm going to push that to there. And that is, as you see, it's pushed that to my repo. So I can copy that URL. And you can see got an option to open the pull request, able to merge. That's good. Got the thing there, signed off by, and it does have all. You can see all your changes here. I always try and remember to check these because I'm often doing different things. But I will then create a pull request. You don't have to worry about suggesting reviewers. Ricardo's a reviewer, always a good suggestion, but you don't have to do that. And you'll see a review is required. Even though I created ZAP, I am not allowed to commit any code directly to ZAP or ZAP Extensions. We require 2 reviews from people in the core team.
Hey, Simon.
Yeah.
I pinged King Thorn and THC202 in the chat. I think we're going to get live core team review on the stream here.
Whoa. Okay, that'll be good.
Heads up.
So you can see what's happening is these things sometimes happen really quickly. If you're watching, the more people are watching, the slower they'll go. So I don't know how many people we've got live, but it could take forever, but hopefully not. So what you see is we're doing checks, build checks, and actually click on these details. You can actually see them running. And it's running the build. And we're actually running the build across Java 8, 11, and 17 now. And as you see, we're doing a lot of checks. And this is why we like to have as many unit tests as possible, because it just means we have that much more confidence that everything's working correctly. A watched build never completes.
Simon, I know you updated a bunch of documentation on zaproxy.org talking about all the stuff you kind of walked through there real quickly. The spotless apply, Jacoco coverage tests, all the good stuff. recently updated, I believe.
Exactly, yeah. So if you go to documentation again, so ZAP Developer Guide, and verifying your changes. I think that's one of the so code formatting. That's the spotless apply. We do recommend installing SonarLint, which I haven't done here, but that was a fairly small change. I should get away with it. It will automatically be scanned by looks good to me as well. And a bit about the existing unit tests, new unit tests, and some good examples. I've just remembered something. This is going to fail. It's not going to fail to build, but I'm going to fail a review because I forgot to make some changes. We don't tend to do this kind of stuff. So I'm going to find, and so Ricardo, if you're listening, I will, I did remember. And so I'll get rid of those. And so obviously I've run this by him beforehand. Actually, these are kind of set up really. So, and these things might seem picky, but it really helps to actually have the code looking like we expect. It just makes it easier to review. So
tell the people what you're doing there.
So basically, these things, setting up the HTTP message and initializing the rule, that's part of the setup really. So that should be in the given section rather than the when. So given all these preconditions, when we do the scan rule, then we should get this. And basically means the unit test I copied wasn't quite right. Wouldn't pass review these days. So I just made those changes.
And then you undid. This is going to be my favorite part because force merging. You undid this part, and why did you?
Yeah, it's not needed, and it just kind of makes things look a bit messier. So we kind of recommend not having it at the moment.
Awesome.
So I'm going to go to, and I'm just going to do a spotless apply because you never know what you might have done. And that was quick. So team commit, and just one change. In this case, I'm just going to amend my commit. I'll commit that and go back to the command line. And in this case, if I just do a git push, it will reject it. I'll do a -force. I really want to do this. And hopefully now that will be slightly better.
Hey, can you, you went through that pretty fast. Can you talk about why you did an amended git and then had to do a force push there?
I will, but I've just noticed that Rick has pointed out that I wasn't being consistent, and he's quite right. So I will go through this again. And what we'll see here is we just got dots after everything. Consistency is important, and I didn't spot that. So I'm going to put the dot in. I think that's the only review change at the moment. Let's see how it goes. So I will I'll do a spotless apply. It shouldn't do anything, but just to make sure. And so what I could do is I could make a new commit, added a dot. It doesn't actually help. It doesn't really add anything to it. It should have been there first beforehand. So I'm amending the previous commit, which in Eclipse is done that way. So it brings up my previous commit message, and I just can commit. So when I push it from the command line, if I just do a git push, it's failing with a non-fast forward. That is because I have made changes to an existing commit that the remote is aware of. And it doesn't like that. So the only option you've got, either if I'd added a new commit message, that would have been fine as far as GitHub is concerned. But it wouldn't have been fine from the review, because otherwise you get loads of commit messages. Oh, fix this, tweak that. It doesn't, it makes it hard to review. It doesn't look good. So we like kind of have one commit with everything in, unless you're making different changes and with prefer those to be in separate PRs. And then I've done that force push, and that means it goes through. So I will give him the thumbs up on that. And if I refresh it, you'll see it's outdated. So I can resolve that conversation. And we're back in the build. As you'll see, the DCO check has passed, and that was the signed by bit. If we we look at the details, it succeeded. If it failed, it'll tell you about why the failure happened. So as a review, I'm happy with that. Something silly I missed, nice and straightforward. So a nice easy one there. And we're now just waiting for the build.
What was the other comment? There's something about the handler up top.
Ooh, where's that?
A little higher, I think.
Oh, handle the same in both tests. Yeah, that's a point. I forgot to change that, I think. Well, in this case, it's doing something different, so I'm okay with that. That's how we usually do it. So I'm gonna, so I've named them differently. There's always tweaks, but I think awesome. I think I'll get away with that one. And Rick has approved it. It's still running, so it can't be merged until we've got 2 approving reviews. In the core team, we can enable auto merge. I'll put that on, confirm auto merge, but that will only happen when we've had the second review and assuming all of the build tasks pass. Certainly hoping they will. So you can run some of these things from the command line as well, but it doesn't, running from the command line will help you, give you that sense of security, but it doesn't make any difference to what happens on the in GitHub. So don't know how long these will take, but that's probably that's all I was going to show. So
Simon, what's some of the other documentation that you've been updating around contributing ZAP rules, how to write ZAP rules? I know there's been a lot of movement around that coming up to ZAPCon.
Yeah, I've just been interrupted by a cat who my wife is now helping to remove. And so with the documentation, we'll see we have, as I mentioned in the developer guide, we've got a lot more information about creating new add-ons. So we kind of explain how to do that. We've got basically you copy the simple example add-on, which is what I always do if I create a new add-on. You don't need to do this if you're just creating scan rules, typically. But if you're doing something significant, adding significant new functionality, you may well want to create a new add-on. So we detail that. Mentioned already, gone through the verifying your changes. And we have this section on general development rules and guidelines. There's a lot here. We don't expect you on the first PR to go through everything here, but if you start contributing to that more, you'll probably find that these are the things that will get picked up when you do PRs. One of the things that you may notice, if you change anything under org.paros proxy.paros, then we will say you've got to put in this ZAP comment at the beginning. That is actually a requirement of the Paros license. And we do our best to make sure we follow all licenses and do everything in the correct way. But I said, if you're just starting with ZAP, contributing to ZAP, don't worry about these too much. But if you start contributing more, then it'll be worth having a look through these, and you might understand why you're getting complaints or you're getting pull requests rejected or comments on them. And Akshat has reviewed it as well. So it's looking good. The Java 17 has passed. 8 and 11 should pass as well. Looks good to me so far. Well, I mean, past JavaScript and Python because there aren't any. Don't know how long that'll take. It can be very quick. It can take a long time. So best not to wait for it. But any last minute questions from anyone?
I don't, Simon, nobody has any questions. You did such an amazing job walking everyone through how we're doing this, ways to contribute, how to set up your development environment, how to change some rules. Super good information.
Oh, and I will now turn to face you. Right. I mean, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us. Huge thank you to everyone who's contributed to ZAP, especially the core team. And I hope you enjoyed ZAPCon, either live or watching the sessions afterwards. Hope everyone has a great day.